Hi, and welcome to the Business of Brewing, the 10th module in this series. You will hear from 4 presenters in this series. My name is Mike Harding. I'm the CEO of Three Daughters Brewing. You'll hear from John Eric Savitsky, our COO, Lee Harding, our CMO, and you'll also get to hear from Bill Carmen, who's the VP of Sales and Marketing at Great Bay Distributing, and our partner in Pinellas County. I want to tell you a little bit about Three Daughters so you get a background as to who we are. We've been in business for 2 years. We're in Pinellas County, Florida, and St. Petersburg, more to the point. We brew on a 30-barrel system that we'll talk about later when we get to equipment, but we bought it from a company called Premier Stainless out in Escondido, California. And we also have a 1-barrel that we brew on for test batches in the tasting room that we bought from Alpha Ruby. In 2014, we made 2,500 barrels, and most of that went to distribution. About 1,000 barrels went through the tasting room, and the rest went through distribution. In 2015, we're on track to do about 9,000 barrels. We currently have 4 cans that are now out in various locations throughout the state of Florida. We distribute to the whole state of Florida, and we've got almost 2,000 locations that we distribute to. So that gives you a little bit of a little idea of your presenters and their background and where they come from. As we go through the business of brewing, there are some recommendations on resources that we have used in the past and we'll reference as we go through our presentations. First and foremost, actually, is our business plan. So the business plan that we put together is available online to you all. It is in its entirety and without any redaction whatsoever. Use it. We highly encourage it. It is not perfect. It was written before we knew a lot of the stuff that we currently know, but I think it's a really good starting point. Starting Your Own Brewery by Dick Cantwell is a book that's been out for about 3 years, and he helps take you step by step through their process of starting a brewery. We like that book tremendously. Brewing Up a Business, Sam from Dogfish Head wrote this book probably about 6 years ago, and we find it to be a great read as well. And then Quality Management, Essential Planning for Breweries by Mary Pelletieri is more recent. It just came out in the past month or so, and we have found it to be very essential in terms of expanding your brewery, especially on the quality side. So as we go through, we'll have a few assumptions that we build on. We assume that your beer is already rock solid. We assume that you already have your brewer and he or she is rock solid as well. And we assume that you've made the decision to jump off the deep end of the pool and enter this entrepreneurial this business of brewing. We'll talk about specifics in business as they relate to our industry. So this is not a module on how to write a business plan. We're going to talk more about the business of brewing and how it relates to writing your business plan. My advice is, as we move forward, I will present you with some things to do that comes from the list of things to do that we created when we built Three Daughters Brewing. My second piece of advice is to seek out knowledge. The Craft Brewers Association is a phenomenal resource. It is the biggest association in our industry. It's a national association, and they really have geared it towards the business of brewing and how to open a brewery. With that said, the biggest trade the biggest trade organization event that we go to is called the Craft Brewers Conference, or Craft Brewers Association Conference. It's in Philly this year. It's in May 2016 in Philadelphia, but it's in May of every year. I realize that it's a big expense to get there. The tickets are about $100. It lasts 4 days long, but everything and everyone that is in our industry is there. Anything that you want to purchase, there will be 12 companies there that have one of those, and it covers the expanse of marketing and the legal side of what we do, and the equipment side of what we do, and the labeling side of what we do, and it is absolutely phenomenal in terms of a resource. And last is ask lots of questions. I'm going to encourage you to go out and find brewers in your market and talk to them. And one of the very interesting and neat things that you'll find as you go out and talk to more and more people in our industry is that there is a culture of very open sharing information. So if you were to head down to in our market to Greenbench or to Paradise or over to Coppertail on the other side of the bay, you would find that folks are very open to sharing information, more so than you might think. So ask lots of questions. So let's get started. In this section, we're going to cover who do you want to be, site considerations, and finding a site, the very first parts of building your brewery. With that said, the most critical decision that you're going to make is who is it that you want to be? And this will dictate everything that goes into your business plan: zoning, equipment, licensing, and funding. This is where you figure out exactly who it is that you want to be, not only today, but in 5 years from now. I divide these categories out in a brew pub, microbrewery, and a full-on production brewery, because this is how your municipalities will define you. And I encourage you, as the things to do on this slide, I encourage you to find the zoning office in your municipality, if it's your town or your city or your county, and go ask somebody. Just walk into the building and ask somebody, I want to build a brewery, can you define for me where these are allowed to be? And you'll find that although these are municipality by municipality, they have copied from other cities and towns around the country, and that's pretty standardized. In terms of a brew pub, they'll pretty much let you put anywhere. It's more like a restaurant or a bar. A microbrewery there is limited in terms of distribution and on-site tasting room, but they limit it to how many barrels you can produce. And a production brewery is full on; you can produce as much as you want. The important part is that you'll find that they limit footprints in your area. So if you want to be a full-on production brewery in the city of St. Petersburg, you are limited to a spot within the city that they consider the old industrial district, and it's maybe 20 blocks long and 15 blocks wide, and so that becomes very critical to your business plan. Now, back to who is it that you want to be. The idea of a brew pub is much easier to get into. The cost of entry is much lower, and you could look at tens of thousands of dollars to start a brew pub versus millions of dollars to start a production brewery. I would caution you to really start to think about, what do you want to look like in 3 years? And that's going to be the crux of writing this business plan, is what do you want to look like in 3 years? You may be limited by capital today and how much you have to invest, but that doesn't mean that you can't look at and consider, how much do we want to be producing in 3 years, and what can we annex or add? How big can we get out of the decision that we make? Site considerations as you move forward. Regardless of the size that you want to be, you need to consider forklifts, pallets, and semi-trucks. You'll get to the point where one pallet of grain or 50-pound bags of grain is much more cost effective to buy than one 50-pound bag of grain. So as you start to look at finding a site, as you start to build this infrastructure list and write out exactly what you want to look like, carefully consider the fact that you're going to have big deliveries coming in, and you probably will want a forklift, or you'll definitely need a pallet jack in your facility. Water, power, and gas become very important. And this is where, back to our list of things to do on this infrastructure, we'll talk a lot about our list of things to do on this page. We'll talk a lot about infrastructure lists and requirements, and this is going to require research. Do you need 2-phase power or 3-phase power, and how much water and power and gas is available at this site? So this infrastructure list is going to become important when you go look at sites and you figure out that they have 2-inch water main coming in the building, and they have 400 amps of power in the building, and gas is already available there. So that's not an investment that you're going to need to make. Or you'll find the absolute perfect site, and gas is already there, and you have a 2-inch water main, but there's not enough power in the building. And this will become very important when you go back to your business plan and try and figure out, well, we've got this much money available to us, and we're going to have to invest money in bringing more power into the building. So on my list of things to do, I encourage you to start an infrastructure list. And these are the things that I want to consider as I go out and look at sites. And it's back to going back to, how do I learn about this? Lots of information available online. But I really encourage you to head to those 4 closest breweries around you and start to talk about, hey, when you went through this pain point, tell me what the questions that you asked were. Tell me what was available when you bought this equipment package. Second on our list of things to do on this slide is graph paper. Graph paper was our friend when we were building this. We went through pads and pads of graph paper, and it's important to start to draw your brewery. So you have a vision in your head of what you want to do. Now it's time to make it come alive. And I would encourage you, take a big square and draw it and start to fit in the footprint of my brew house, my fermenters, and my bright tank, and we'll start with that. and how do they fit and where do they go, and you'll start to determine how much space you need and what you're going to go out and look for. Going out and looking for a site. This is the very first critical piece. Back to that, this will determine the very first crux and important part of your business plan. I would encourage you at this point to find friends that are architects, realtors, and lawyers. Better spend the money now than later, and they can answer a lot of questions in the front end about things that will need to be addressed as you go forward. You'll find the perfect site. You'll find the site that you want to build your brewery, and you'll come to realize or come to find that there is a big piece that it's lacking and is just cost prohibitive to move forward on. So those three pieces, or those three people, or those three professions become very important at this part. I'll give you an example. In the city of St. Petersburg, they require fire sprinklers in breweries. It costs us $37,000 to install a fire sprinkler. In the county, right outside the city, in Pinellas County, they don't require fire sprinklers. And our friends at Paradise Brewing built outside the city and in the county's footprint for just that reason. They didn't need to put in a fire sprinkler, and they were able to save that cost. Now, they traded some sites for this site, but that became an important part of their cost savings. So size matters. Back to the idea of, do you want to be a brew pub, a microbrewery, or a full-on brewery? 1,000 square feet, 5,000 square feet, and 10,000 square feet. Those are the starting points of what defines a microbrewery and a brewery, and a brew pub, a microbrewery, and a brewery. The layout matters just as much, but I give you these as starting points of this is the amount of space that we'll need to start out in this particular category of what we want to be. So at this point in time, I've encouraged you to find graph paper, or buy graph paper, and start drawing what it is that you want to be. With this slide, I encourage you to find a map. Go print a giant Google map, visit zoning, draw out what it is that they limit you to in terms of what you've decided you want to be. Go find buildings that are those sizes that fit what it is that you want to be, and start to look at your options. Lease considerations. Now you've drawn the footprint of what you want to be. You've looked in your municipality to figure where the areas are that you want to be. You've engaged a realtor to help you find sites, and now there are lease considerations. What kind of a lease am I going to sign? What's important in industry specific are two things, in my opinion. One is the length of the lease. You're going to put a lot of money into infrastructure. You're going to spend money on things that you can't take with you. You're going to spend thousands of dollars on glycol piping that's going to stay with the building whenever it is that you're done with it, or whenever you choose to sell your business. So I would look for, in terms of lease, I would look for a 5-year or a 10-year lease, or I would negotiate a 5-year or a 10-year lease and build options into that. Ours at $3 Brewing is a 10-year lease with 3 5-year options. So we have 25 years in our building should we choose to stay in the building for that long. Second is tenant improvement money. If you're going to sign a long lease, you're giving the property holder a value. You're making his property worth more by the fact that he has a solid lease on his property. So it is not uncommon to go back and ask for money to help build this infrastructure that will stay with his property. And they call it TI money, or tenant improvement money. So I would talk to the realtor about asking for thousands of dollars, plan out how much is it going to cost to put in a cooler, how much is it going to cost to build a pad for our chiller, how much is it going to cost to install the glycol piping. And I would ask for increments of that money, or all of that money, and negotiate your way backwards. The things to do on this slide are, again, go find the 4 closest breweries to where you are and start to talk to them about what it is that we've talked about in this section. Next up, we're going to start to talk about business plans.